Today's episode of Socially Democratic is presented to you by Dunn Street. Dunn Street partners with businesses, organisations, unions and social democratic parties across the globe to train leaders, develop engagement strategies and empower people to organise for change. And going into 2021, Dunn Street will continue to work with folks that want to make a difference, inspire, give hope and enable leadership to achieve their shared purpose. To find out how you can partner with Dunn Street, you should hit us up at dunnstreet.com.au. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another special episode of Socially Democratic. It is truly a great day for social democrats around the world. This is your weekly centre-left political and cultural podcast that dive into the progressive issues of the day and the people leading them from home and abroad. And abroad we continue to go because obviously this week was a huge week in the history of the United States because it was election day on Tuesday, Wednesday for us here in Australia, in which Joe Biden from the Democratic Party sought to unseat a one-term president in Donald J. Trump. And as we speak, the count is still going, but we decided to get my good friend and former Obama alumni, Sam Schneidman, to come on to debrief what we know so far. So Sam is on today to really talk about election day, the whole experience in the US, thoughts about what we know so far. We'll talk a little bit about the results and where we think they're going to go, and what this means for Joe Biden and the Democrats. Where very, very top line stuff about where we think victory was found. There's so much more to unpack. I thought this would, when we went into today's episode, I figured that this would probably be the last time we get Sam on the show. But now that I think about it, there's so much more to talk about. So we may get him back on again before the month of November is out. But anyway, it was great for Sam. He hasn't had much sleep, nor have you, I would imagine. But it was great for Sam to take some time out of his Friday night, Saturday morning here, to jump on the phone and have a quick chat about what we know so far. So that's what we're going to be talking about on this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to Socially Democratic via your favourite podcast app, and to get all the latest updates via the Dunn Street socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. What we are doing is 3 times a day on our Instagram stories, we are seeking to give you guys updates on the count with the remaining 4 to 5 key battleground states: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, and North Carolina. But we're holding off on North Carolina for the moment because they're not going to start counting, I don't think, until some point over either this weekend or early next week. They've indicated that they won't have a full result by November 11. So we're primarily focusing at the moment certainly on those other 4 states, of which Biden is now in the lead. Obviously, overnight, Biden took the lead in Georgia and Pennsylvania, which is huge news. So follow Dunn Street on Instagram if you want some updates on the count, how many votes Biden is ahead by, how many votes to count, that kind of stuff. Just some basic quick news for you. Okay, anyway, let's get to today's episode. We're taping this one on a Saturday morning in Melbourne, and it is a glorious day for social democrats, not just here in Melbourne and not just in the United States, but I think all around the world. But today we are going to focus on the United States because unless you've been living under a rock, we are now getting some more certainty around the election for the 46th president of the United States. And to help me debrief this one more time is my good friend and buddy and former Obama organizer, Sam Schneidman. Good morning, good evening. How are you?
I'm good-ish.
I know.
How are you?
Oh man, look, it's been a roller coaster.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. At least, I have not gotten much sleep over the past couple days, to be honest with you.
And even though this is an audio medium, but I can see you, it doesn't it doesn't look like you've had much sleep over the last couple of days.
I think the basis of any friendship has to be truth, and I really appreciate you for being willing to speak the truth to me.
Mate, I'm here for you. And I'm here for you for the
Yes.
next next hour. And the thing about it is, like, I would imagine, I don't know my audience personally, but I know a fair few of them. And I know that certainly the Australian-based listeners to Socially Democratic have also been on this journey since, well, for us, it was Wednesday morning at about 9 a.m. that we all kind of got up and turned on our TVs and watched our various US broadcasters, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, or whatever you can get your hands on. And I think we've all been up to some ridiculous hours. I know some people who stayed up until, on election day, stayed up until 4 a.m. the next morning waiting for the Michigan results to come out. So we're all knackered, and it's been an incredible journey. And I'm just so glad to be where we're in a position where Joe Biden is on his way to becoming the president-elect. Talk me through, before we get into the stats and figures and details and that kind of stuff, I actually just want to get a sense of your experience, because you're obviously holed up in Vermont, in New England right now.
Yeah.
Different kind of experience this time compared to others. Talk us through about election day for you.
Well, this election day, as we all knew it would be, was unlike any other, in the sense that for me, it was a pretty isolated experience. I was alone at my house, not at a party or anything like that. And that's due to the pandemic. And, just as an aside, I think the election day was the first day that the United States had surpassed 100,000 cases. And then there was 120,000 yesterday. So what makes this interesting is that a lot of people were sort of watching this on their own, kind of going through this very collective stressed experience, but doing so in an isolated way, where you just sat and waited and waited and waited. And finally it's 6 p.m. Okay, results coming in. Early results at 6 p.m., where results in Eastern Kentucky and Indiana come out were, encouraging for Biden. He obviously wasn't winning, but seemed to have picked up on Hillary support from 2016. And then what we knew was going to happen happened. But even though we knew it was going to happen, it didn't make it any good. So one of the things that people have been talking about heading into the election is this whole idea of the red Mirage and the blue shift. So this is the idea that early on election night and throughout the evening, it's going to look like that Donald Trump and the Republicans are actually ahead by a significantly higher margin than they actually are. And that's due to the dynamics of which party decided to focus on a mail-in strategy and which party decided to focus specifically, more so on showing up to the polls. And so, results didn't really start coming in earnest until 9, 10, and 11 o'clock on Tuesday night. And what you were seeing, if you're a Biden supporter, was disconcerting. I think one of the things that was most stressful is that Virginia was taking a long time to come through, and it looked really red. And it was like, oh God, what has happened here? Is Virginia in trouble? Because if Virginia is in trouble, it's lights out. It's not good. But what ended up happening is that it just took a really long time for Democratic strongholds in Northern Virginia to report their numbers. So as the night went on, we could see that, it was getting pretty close. And then by the time the weariest among us were going to bed at 2 a.m. or 1:30, maybe even 3, it was becoming clear that the blue shift was going to start happening. And that is the states were getting through their mail-in ballot counts. And it was looking like that Biden was going to pull ahead in Wisconsin and in Michigan, probably in Pennsylvania. Nevada was looking good. Arizona was still holding. And Georgia was in play, like, not called yet. And so I think everyone had lived through this tortured experience and had decided to go to bed. And then, we wake up and we see that it's a bit closer and it's looking good for Biden. And we enter into the saga of the last 2 to 3 days of waiting to see when finally this is going to end.
I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, particularly because, you were campaigning in 2008. You've previously spoken about the importance of the 2008 campaign for you personally in terms of your journey into Democratic politics. You campaigned in 2008. You were an RFD in Nevada in 2012. You worked on the 2016 campaign. I want to get a sense of how this election compared for you in terms of stress levels and importance and whatnot. Now, I was over there in 2008. I was over there in 2016. I've always, as a young man, I've been paying attention to US politics. I felt that I've had a minimal amount of investment in a campaign in 08 and 16 by virtue of the fact of just going and knocking on doors and making some calls. But I didn't do anything in this campaign because we couldn't go over to the States. I felt more invested in this campaign than I have in any others. By about 3 PM, I had a headache, and I thought it was because I might have been a bit dehydrated. I hadn't had any beers yet, and I just suddenly realized that I've got a stress headache. Like, I am stressed, and I was sitting on the couch in a certain position, clutching my mobile phone and my iPad and every device in front of me, just kind of quietly freaking out. And stress in a kind of like, oh no, this isn't stress in a not like 2016. I remember walking to a bar in Williamsburg after I left a phone bank in the greater area of Brooklyn, just expecting us to have won. I think I've told the story before. And I walked in and looked at the TV screen, and the bar's eerily quiet. And I've gone, and it was probably about 9:30 at night. I've gone, oh, this isn't good. Oh, this is not good at all. I didn't feel like this time. This time I sort of felt like, okay, I never thought we'd win Florida. I just didn't. I called that. Yeah. I said that last week. I said, we're not going to win Florida. It's just a shitty state, right? And all I was worried about was the Midwest. But just seeing those early numbers in the Midwest, that was getting me nervous. But knowing full well that all of these early votes weren't counted, but it's this mystery. Like, are they going to go, Biden's way? Is it going to be as pronounced as it in the end it turned out to be? Sure. That's what was stressing me out.
So I think, if you're into politics, right, in a sort of impassioned way, every election is going to stress you out and is going to seem like the most important election ever. This obviously took on a different importance for me than the composition of my stress in 2020 was different than the stress that I had felt in previous elections. And that's because I, like a lot of people, wanted a total repudiation of Donald Trump. A lot of stuff is going to be determined by the outcome of this election, policy-wise, certainly on really important issues like climate change, whether or not we're able to continue advancing access to healthcare in the United States, racial justice stuff. I think that was always there, that policy interest is there. But by far the most animating factor of all of this was bringing America back from the brink of brazen corruption and the path to authoritarianism. Our democracy is incompatible with the way that Donald Trump has discharged his duties over the last 4 years. And I was really hopeful that we'd begin to turn away from that and issue an outright rejection of that philosophy. Optically speaking, I don't think that rejection happened. But what does matter is we have a path forward to begin to undo some of the damage that Donald Trump has caused the country and the world.
When you woke up on Friday morning, that was sort of 1 o'clock, 12, 1 o'clock. I think most of Australia that was engaged on this, waiting for Pennsylvania.
Still waiting. It's like that Talking Head song, still waiting.
Oh, okay. So finally, there's a batch of
you
votes.
You might have to edit my singing out.
Oh no, that's staying. That is staying.
Oh damn. Should have known.
Yeah. What to talk us through when that first batch of new votes on Friday morning came out in Pennsylvania? What kind of feeling went through?
Well, I mean, Pennsylvania is like, why do we have to deal with Pennsylvania? Because we know, like, Georgia, we're ahead. Arizona, Nevada, look like the game is over, right? No matter how you look at this. I think it was nice to see Pennsylvania pull ahead, right? That was like, just yet another confirmation that Donald Trump has no way out of this. It's done for him. But I think we had known for a while that Pennsylvania is going to tip into Joe's column. And I think a lot of the estimates that I see is by about 100,000 votes in the end. But it's just going to take a while to get there. And I think like a lot of people, not only are we fatigued from watching way too much cable news, but we are also fatigued of like having to go through this nightmare, and we just sort of want this to end. But it's ending in the only way that it was ever going to end. Drawn out, melodramatic, ridiculous. It was always destined to end this way.
As much as, the Electoral College, for all of its flaws, certainly produces a plot that is nothing short of dramatic. Like, if it was just a simple popular vote, it would be over. We would have known who won, by, oh God.
This is like why, this is why you can't just outright dismiss simulation theory, right? Because here we have this ridiculous system that somehow has manufactured tons and tons of drama, and we have this ridiculous reality TV star personality who meets these unique dynamics at just the right time and exploits them, and they produce the most dramatic, entertaining experience politically that I think America's ever had. It's not a good entertainment, but it is what it is.
You mentioned at the top of your remarks about because of COVID, we're in isolation, and obviously in Australia, or certainly in Melbourne anyway, we are still, whilst we're coming out of the tighter restrictions, there's limitations about how many people you can have around your house, so that there was no ability for us to have sort of election day parties anyway, or indeed across the next 3 days, we've all been kind of going about our own business, but we're all in similar places. We're all on our couches watching cable news. So WhatsApp and various kind of communication platforms have come into play. Like, I've got a WhatsApp group that's probably got about 10 people on it, and they're spread out from places across Melbourne, Southeast Asia, and the United States. And so we're just messaging back and forth, and the meme generators that are just punching out a lot of incredibly funny content.
It's great for content.
I look, without, and I don't want to sound like a wanker, because I don't think our WhatsApp group thread is any better than anyone else's, but like, someone has got to grab one of these and put them in the Smithsonian as a moment in time that was the 2020 campaign, because it just sums up where we are right now so perfectly. One of my friends who is living in Detroit, Michigan, so he goes to sleep obviously when it's the evening, and then he wakes up the next morning to see there's 450 messages that he's got to thread through that's been,
I just like ignore
all of these
move
Australians.
on.
Oh, no, but it's great content. It's quality content here.
Good
Very good
The
content.
one thing to know is that there's always going to be good content.
Yeah, exactly. But the point I was going to get to was because you mentioned cable news. And who have you settled on over the course of the last 3 days that has been your cable news network that's been giving you the information that you want? This is not an ad for cable news, by the way. I just want to have a conversation about cable news.
Yeah, no. So it's interesting because for someone who is a close follower of politics, I actually don't watch any cable news because it's crazy and will give you brain disease. But I obviously have to watch it now here for the election. So my diet has been CNN. I just, for whatever reason, I find that they have like a pretty even-handed delivery of reality, right? I think, the Trumposphere and they have a reputation for being like, not that it's like real reality, but they are labeled as fake news, CNN, and then there's MSNBC, which obviously Trump tries to throw in the same bucket as CNN. But I think that the CNN, from my vantage point, has just been more straight up and down here, and so I don't know. It seemed like it was the best, easiest accessible for my ability to take what's going on. MSNBC has been good. It's got a little more chaotic energy. What's the Steve Kornacki is great, but the whole angle that they have the TV set up on him, doing the map, is I need. Can we get a zoom out, please? And then of course I flip over to Fox quite a bit, and I loved watching the anchors grill the data nerd about the decision to call Arizona, and he was not backing down on that. And this poor guy, he's such a nerd. He was sweating bullets because he's under such, not only is he under the reputational pressure, right, to not be wrong, there's obviously the optics pressure of Fox and what they represent. And he, when he called Arizona, that
was courageous.
Really, yeah, but it also means there's no way out at that point, right? Donald Trump's got to run an inside straight, and he just can't do that. And so I watched that interview. That was entertaining. And then yesterday I tried to watch Sean Hannity. Man, it's propaganda. It's straight up crazy shit. Crazy shit.
In Australia, for those that have access to cable through Foxtel or whatever, I think you've got the option of either CNN or Fox. Basically, I'm 99% certain you cannot get MSNBC in Australia legally. I am lucky, and shout out to my good friends in New England, Dave and Alex, who I think listen to the podcast every now and then. I've got the Xfinity Comcast login, so I can get MSNBC with a geo-blocker. So that's kind of, all this year, I've kind of switched off from CNN, and I've started to just watch MSNBC. And that's kind of what I settled on for the whole I have settled on for the whole 3 days. And I've really enjoyed it. I flick over to, I just check out Fox every now and then. Whenever there's good Democratic news, I'll flip to Fox as well just to see how they're kind of spinning it. But they've been reasonably balanced, actually, which has been interesting to watch. And it's a whole other conversation. But I've really enjoyed MSNBC. The partisanship of MSNBC is what I need right now. I don't want balance. I just want all in, because the stakes are too high. I just need, it's kind of, you know this about me, Sam. When I watch baseball, I want the Nesson commentary. I don't want, the national broadcaster. I want bias. I want Jerry Remy talking about when he played at Fenway. When I'm watching the Celtics, I want Mike Gorman and I want Scal. You know, I don't want TNT or whatever. I want my biased commentary. And it's the same with my politics. And the great thing about MSNBC is it is so parochial. They're not even trying to hide it. They accidentally drop in words like "we" every now and then, which I just love. But it is so goddamn parochial.
Well, CNN has the can't miss dynamic with Rick Santorum making sad face all night. As he tries to articulate some sort of legitimization of what the Republican Party is doing.
Which is a shit sandwich to do. Like, that's tough.
Get real, man. This guy's getting paid a decent amount of money to do it. Like, who cares?
Yeah, I guess so.
You know, I have zero sympathy for him.
No, that's true. And he does. It's his choice to go on. Now, here's someone I do want to talk about, and you mentioned before, Steve Kornacki. I'm developing a very, very, very unhealthy relationship with Steve Kornacki.
You and a lot of other people.
I love that man.
Specifically women who have been DMing him.
I did not know that.
On his Instagram account.
There's a hashtag tracking Kornacki. It's fantastic. He's brilliant. Like, he is brilliant. And it's not just because he's a native New Englander either, but he's animated. He's actually got, I think he's got better insight into the states and into county analysis than the guy on CNN who I used to like a long John. What's his surname? Bloody can't remember. Anyway, Kornacki's fantastic. John King. Thank you. Kornacki is fantastic, and it's disappointing that Australians can't get to see him because they don't get MSNBC. But if you can somehow get your hands on a dodgy copy of MSNBC, I highly recommend. He's brilliant. Anyway, let's turn to the actual election itself. And what I will do, I'm going to do this very, very quickly because I know that this is going to be old data by the time you listen to it. But at the time of recording, it's like 10:42 a.m. on Saturday morning. In Pennsylvania, Biden is leading by 5,500 with 145,000 votes to count. And it's trending 80% to Biden. So your thoughts on Pennsylvania? Let's quickly sort of run the board, Sam. We're home and hose in PA, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, we're looking really good in PA. Where I think, when you're looking at this, you need to think about two things. Where are the votes coming in from, right? Because geography matters. If it's coming from the counties that are Pittsburgh and around Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and around Philadelphia, that benefits Joe Biden. But if they're coming from the middle of the state, that benefits Donald Trump. And in addition to where are the votes coming from, you also need to look at what type of votes are they and how much does your candidate need to win them by. So let's talk about what type of votes are they. So not all absentee ballots are the same. Some can be from normal voters like you and me, or they can be military ballots, or they can be things called provisional ballots. Provisional ballots are votes that are cast where the information that's used to identify the voter is somehow in question. So what they'll do is they'll register, they'll take your vote, but they'll work to confirm your identity or some other hang up. But it seems that a lot of the votes that were coming in were just straight up normal mail-in votes. And they were coming from places like Allegheny County, which is where Pittsburgh is. And they were coming from Philadelphia, where Joe Biden was winning like with 95% of the vote. And the more that those votes come in, they pad his lead. And there's just no statistical way forward for Donald Trump really to come in there and do it. I think one of the key reasons why we're talking here on a Friday night and the networks have not called this yet is because they want to hold out for, the absolute miraculous possibility that somehow there's provisional ballots or there's some sort of like litigation that doesn't come through. But you're looking at where these votes come from. what type of votes they are and what their sort of margin is. So how much is your candidate winning them by?
And you make some good points there. So at this point in time, there are 145,000 votes remaining, but that does not include military or provisionals. And I was just before we went on air, I was listening to MSNBC, and they were talking about how many they estimate there's probably potentially 100,000 provisionals, but many of them can get thrown out if it turns out that their original vote was counted, so they didn't need to have that provisional vote. So if there's two ballots that have been tabulated, one of those, the provisional, gets chucked because the original vote counted because it arrived in the mail or it was processed. So some of those can get thrown out. Right now, in order for, even though Biden's got a 5,500 vote lead in Pennsylvania.
No. At the moment, it's 17,000.
Oh, is it? Shit. Sorry. Let me refresh this. Thanks, Sam. Oh, right. Okay, you're right. Oh, sorry. Yes. 17,000. Okay. And there are 107,000 votes remaining. The Trump needs to average.
It's over.
Trump needs to average 57% of the remaining 107,000 votes to count. He needs to get 57% of them in order to catch Biden. Right now, he's averaging 36% of the vote that's coming in, and Biden's averaging 76. That trend will not. Highly unlikely that trend will change. In fact, if I'm looking across the last 2 hours of the ballots that have come in, that trend has Biden's breakdown trend has been holding up around 60 to 70. So yeah, Pennsylvania is done, and that's 20 electoral votes. That is the game.
The game is over, man. I think no one really wants to be. And this is what I can't understand. Donald Trump is a little bitch. Like, why are people afraid of this guy? Like, someone just needs someone who matters needs to stand up to him.
I think mathematically the decision desks in all the networks are just waiting for the lead to get to a point where the provisionals can't overturn the result.
Yeah, I think
that's what they're trying to do. Quickly, Nevada, Biden's lead is 22,000. Estimated amount of votes remaining is 131,000. In order for Trump to catch Biden, he needs to get about 57% return rate of that is 131,000. Currently, he's getting 41. It is a little bit closer. How are you feeling about a state that you have campaigned in on several cycles?
Nevada?
Yeah.
I'm feeling good about it. All the outstanding. So right now the lead is around 20,000 votes. All the votes that are outstanding are pretty much concentrated in Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is and which is heavily Democratic. There's no way forward that Donald Trump can win Nevada. And the most authoritative journalist on Nevada politics has called it for Joe Biden. I think it's done.
Clark County at the moment is reporting 88% in, and it's 53-44 to Biden in his favor. So if that holds up, then you'd imagine that those 6 electoral votes will go to Joe Biden. The big one that was super interesting,
which puts him at 269, I believe.
Yes, it does indeed. The big one that we all enjoyed yesterday evening, obviously Melbourne time, was Georgia. Currently, this is 5 minutes ago. Oh, that lead has come down a little bit. Anyway, it's 4,168. It's saying votes remaining. It's now saying unknown on this site that I'm looking at.
Basically, because they're at like 99% in, they're dealing with like a mishmash of military ballots, mail-in ballots. They're getting sort of the last ones in.
Right. That's going to recount. Yeah.
Yes, it is, and apparently so is the one in Wisconsin. Here's the thing about recounts. You are only likely to, if a recount goes in your favor, we're talking hundreds of votes. It is so rare for a recount to bring you back thousands of votes. It's just not. It's not going to happen for Donald Trump. He has to pay for the recount in Wisconsin, and he's within his right to get it because I think it's within 1%. But he has to pay for it. It's not going to work out for him. There's a recount in Georgia. Maybe that brings it a little closer. It's not going to work for him either.
Sticking with going back to the Sunbelt region of the country, Arizona, with their 11 electoral votes. 7 minutes ago, the vote differential, Biden was leading by 38,455. There is an estimated 250,000 votes to count. Trump needs to get around 56% of the remaining votes. He's currently averaging 58. Ooh, okay.
That one's a little closer, but again, it's unlikely that Trump is going to overtake that. If he does, that's fine. Biden still looks great everywhere else.
Yeah, which is enough. That'll get him probably 306. Oh, no. If without Arizona, that doesn't get him to 306. That gets into 200.
We're looking about 290 to 306 is where this is going to end up.
If he doesn't get Arizona, it's 299. I'm not even going to talk about North Carolina. What a joke. Like, just count what you've got and just keep rolling. Like, I cannot believe they're like, come back and see us on November 11. Like, it's pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic. Yeah. Okay, what does this mean for Joe Biden? Let's call it. Like, no one else is going to call it. Social Democratic, we're now calling it for Joe Biden. He is now going to be the 46th president of the United States. Congratulations. Second Irish Catholic president to a person to become the president. Mazel tov. Wonderful result for the Democrats. I'm going to throw it to you, Sam Schneidman. What are your initial first takes?
My initial first takes as to like what this means for Joe Biden
and the Democrats.
Well, what this means for Joe Biden, what this means for the Democrats are a couple of different things. So, obviously, Joe Biden is going to have control over the executive branch of the federal government. I think where you're going to see this influence play out in a lot of ways is sort of certainly on foreign policy. And then secondly, with sort of the way the administration treats things like immigration, healthcare, all sort of like aspects of policy. But what they can't do is set new policy. It's really hard to sort of change and improve things without control of Congress. Now, it's looking like the Democratic control of the House is going to remain, though that's not by any way certain, but it's likely. And it's looking likely that they're also going to not have control of the Senate, which means that it's going to be really hard to pass an expansion of this social safety net. So Biden has the ability to do a couple of really important things. Number one is begin to heal this country and move us beyond the nightmare of the Donald Trump era. And then he also has the ability to repair some of the damage that has been caused. But it's going to be really hard for him to initiate the significant change that a lot of people would like to see, specifically on healthcare, climate change, financial regulation. Some of that more progressive priority list is going to be harder to achieve.
From a campaign standpoint, reflecting on the campaign, and that's what, over the last, we've been doing this since June last year. My initial thoughts on this victory is that it was a pretty remarkable victory to turf out a one-term president.
Yeah, it's only happened 4 other times in history.
Yeah. And to do it in a way that I think that I feel like Biden's campaign, because of COVID, was in some ways hamstrung. He wasn't getting out as much as he would have liked, and indeed his surrogates, and they kind of stepped it up a little bit towards the end of the campaign. But, for a large part of the time that he was really restricted to just hanging out in his house in Delaware. Two, the ground game was limited because they weren't
canvassing
on the doors, and it was
Democrats were not. Yeah,
correct.
Republicans were.
So John,
I think that will really will impact why that. I think that will end up having contributed a lot to why Democrats fared so poorly in the House elections and the Senate elections. They weren't getting sort of the voter contact that we know can really be the difference in races that are decided by 1 to 3 and 4 points.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I was talking to someone on election night, someone from similar to you, sort of Obama alumni field operative. And before the election, we had been umming and ahhing about, is this going to have an impact on the campaign, and as you point out, down ballot races as well. And they texted me, well, there you go. I think we have our answer. That door knocking is such a crucial component of your voter contact program. The Republicans did it. The Democrats couldn't, and respectfully so. And it really showed up. Particularly, voter registration. We were all sort of umming and ahhing about, because we knew that the Republicans had, for a long period of time, have had a very good voter registration program. And we had seen, they talked about their numbers that they had, even though that people were talking about Trump only appealing to his base, the Republicans were saying, we are expanding our base through our voter registration program. Now, I said this on the podcast. I said, well, interestingly enough, though, you're going after people who historically do not vote. And so there is a challenge in that, getting them to vote. But it seems that if you look at the numbers, both across the country and then you look in certain counties and in certain states, Trump expanded his base. And that is down to both their voter registration program that they've done for the last 4 years and then their ground game for their ability to turn them out, which is remarkable.
Yeah, it's true. And Donald Trump continued to do these epically large rallies. And that was a key reason why he was able to turn out almost basically 70 million people. So I think the Democrats will, it's interesting. There's going to be a runoff in 2 Senate races in Georgia. And I think Democrats are needing to reevaluate their approach there and really decide whether or not they're going to invest in a ground game, invest in a more traditional field operation that just isn't all phone calls and texting, but also includes more and new voter registration as well as door knocking to turn out the vote. Because when you're in a special election, Democrats already fare poorly in those, especially in Georgia compared to Republicans, and they're starting at a bit of a disadvantage there. So I would think that that's something that they want to look into.
I love the story of Georgia. I love it from a perspective of I love it when folks in a certain area say, hey, and you can apply this to Australian politics as well in terms of federal seats or state seats, and it just rarely happens in Australia, and I want to see more of it. And I know it's partly down to resources, and our campaigns are funded so centrally. But I love the courage of folks like Stacey Abrams on the ground, who said, even after she lost the gubernatorial race, she said, I'm going to stick around and I'm going to try and keep pushing my home state for it to become competitive. And she did that, and she did that with organising. She did that with voter registration. She did that with just constantly keeping pressure on in her and exercising her strategy to get where she wanted Georgia to be and the people that she was working with. And here we are on Saturday morning, and Georgia is, voting for a Democratic president. It's remarkable. It really is remarkable.
It really is. I think the Wall Street Journal has Biden's electoral count up to 264 now.
Oh, nice. What do they call?
Yes, I don't know if they've called it yet.
Well, that would mean that they've called Nevada.
I think that's it.
Right.
I haven't seen an announcement, but that's what they are reporting.
Here's a question for you. What also struck me watching the count and seeing when, the John Kings of this world and the Steve Kornacki's of this world would flip back to 2016, like, and they're looking at, particularly in the Midwest, looking at Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and looking at the results county by county as the returns were coming in for 2020, going back and looking at 2012 for the Obama election, and then flipping through to 2016 and just seeing how all of these counties out of suburban and then into rural counties that had voted for Obama didn't vote for Hillary at all. I mean, her vote was so concentrated in the cities in those Midwest states. And then seeing some movement back where Biden had started to pick up counties. And it's been slow going because those counties are slowly flipping over to blue as the returns are coming in for the early votes, because on election night, they were all still red. But like, for example, in Pennsylvania, Erie County is now back to being a Democratic county. The county around Pittsburgh, Allegheny, is now back to being a Democratic county. So we're starting to see some changes. But here's some figures for you. It just shows you how remarkable the Obama campaign and the Obama result was in 2012. Because in 2012, Obama, out of those states that I just listed, those Midwestern states, the margin by which he beat Mitt Romney was just under 1 million votes. It was like 920,000 votes. Hillary lost those same states by 77,000 votes, and we know how close that margin was there. Biden is on track to winning back those states by between 230 to 30,000 votes. Obama won those states by close to 1 million. Do we ever, this Obama coalition, like, I wonder where the Democratic Party is going in terms of how they're going to be, because
I think this is like a big misconception that political analysts have a lot of times, and that's they look at coalitions that power political movements, and they tend to view them as static. So, like, what happened to the Reagan coalition or the Obama coalition, and what coalitions really is a snapshot in time of where the country is. And I don't think that if you're running a campaign in 2020, 2022, 2024, you can necessarily think that you can reconstruct the Obama coalition as your pathway to victory. What it does say is that, there are almost 20 million more people in the United States now than there were in 2008. And we're a full 12 years removed from the financial crisis. And our, wealth has just become far more stratified and concentrated in this country. And education has become like a huge divide in class and certainly in the way that you vote, in a way that maybe it wasn't quite in 2008. So Biden, at least in this go around, has built his own coalition that is different from the Obama coalition. And I think that is one of the stories that's worth exploring. But like Obama, Biden's coalition was powered in large part by Black voters.
I think in this sort of, no hardly any sleep assessment that I'm about to make here, I don't think that the path forward for the Democrats necessarily has to try and replicate flipping all of those particular Midwest counties that are rural counties that voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012 and try and bring them back. I mean, certainly some of them have come back, but not all of them, right? I think that, and I want to get your thoughts on this, I think the pathway for the Democrats actually is to reinvest time and energy into voter registration, to expand the Democratic base.
They have to.
And not just in the inner urban parts of big cities like Pennsylvania and Atlanta, but also the suburbs as well. And that's one of the strengths that got Biden over the line was suburban voters came back to the Democratic Party.
Totally. And I think a lot, some of that was powered by antipathy of Donald Trump. That is not going to be there anymore. And so the electoral map is still going to be the electoral map. And Democrats are going to have to deal with that reality where they're going to have to be able to compete in rural areas, in places like the Midwest that might not be seen these days as like hotbeds of Democratic support. So they are going to have to really start expanding their base through things like voter registration. And they're also going to have an honest conversation about what they want their priorities to be and what sort of agenda do they want to sell. And I think that at least within a lot of the House races, that latter piece was especially missing.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. And we could go on this topic for hours, and it's actually been a little bit disappointing to watch on Twitter.
This is wrap up part 1.
Oh, yeah. It's been disappointing to watch on Twitter the internal wars within the broad Democratic activist base.
Oh, God.
Flame each other. And those articles in the Washington Post did not help. Anyway, final thoughts before we wrap up. Donald Trump, I am going to enjoy the Schadenfreude experience of watching him melt down from now until and up until Inauguration Day. Like, his performance is going to be amazing to watch. And in a terrible way, and in a terrible way for leadership, and a terrible way for democracy. But I mean, how do you see this play out for at least until the broadcast media acknowledge that Biden is now the president-elect? What does Trump do? I mean, these legal cases.
Oh man, so
these aren't fair to him.
I've been saying this with friends in sort of a joking way, but like, Donald Trump is an emotional terrorist. He terrorizes people by, forcing us to pay attention to him. He commands the spotlight. He preys on your worst instincts, your base nature, and he winds you up and stresses you out. And it's not just for people who despise him. He does that to his own supporters. He amps everybody up into fever-pitched opposition to anything else. And I think what we're going to see is he is going to take that terroristic modus operandi and just amp that up over the next 2 to 3 months. He is going to really force he's going to call the bluff of the Republican Party. And he's going to say, you got to make me do all this stuff that has traditionally happened. And for that to happen, sycophants like Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Josh Hawley, like, those are the types of people that have to separate from him and stand up to him. In addition to people like Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, who's presently going around on cable news talking about how there's fraud. So that's not going to happen. The other thing is that he is just going to drag this on and say these votes are illegal, they're illegitimate, and just it's going to be pathetic because no one is taking it seriously. It's not working anymore. Like the charade, the show's done. The charade is up. And so that's going to become more and more of a reality. And I think that, we'll see this play out at least most intensely in the next 10 days. How does Donald Trump ever accept this, and how so? Like, he's definitely not going to concede to Biden, which is highly problematic. It's a norm, it's a symbol, but it conveys so much. And then he's unlikely to go to any sort of, or participate in any sort of inauguration, which is, again, very problematic. And then finally, he is going to cause, I believe, it could go one of two ways. He could cause a lot of destruction by wielding the powers of the executive branch to try and cement his policy priorities, or he could just be so self-absorbed in self-pity, and dejection that he's unable to move the apparatus of government in any way. So that remains to be seen. But the through line to all of this is that it's pathetic. It's the definition of pathetic.
And we'll see that when Donald Trump breaks the long-standing norm between presidents, in which the outgoing president writes a personal note for the incoming president, and leaves it in the top drawer of the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. I would warn Joe Biden, because I think that Donald Trump will probably take a dump in that top drawer. That's the kind of pathetic nature of this current president. It is. Look, Sam Schneidman, I know you got to go. It's Saturday morning, Friday night for you. I do have a funny feeling that we will be speaking again, possibly before the year is out. I'm definitely going to get you back for the two Georgia runoffs in the Senate in early January. But can I just say, from a personal point, you and I started doing these podcasts and breaking down the whole journey to Election Day 2020 last June, and I've really enjoyed your insights. And your passion and your experience and just your general comradeship over this journey.
Thank you very much.
We've done a
likewise.
We've covered a lot of ground over the last 18 months, and it's been a lot of fun. So I really do appreciate it. And I've got a lot of feedback from the listeners saying that they've enjoyed your insights and your contribution to the podcast. So Sam,
That's
you
great.
very much.
Thank you very much. All right. And a special thank you and shout out to my Glaswegian fan base.
Indeed. Mum says hello. All right, mate. All the best. And
bye-bye.
We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.